Again, I'm going to pass out my copies of, yes, copies of the poems I'm going to be reading to you all today. Hello everyone. You may know me as a CW student who constantly while they're studying just jamming out with their hands while singing. I'm kind of also known as the girl who goes to Zumba twice a week here at the rec center but has zero coordination whatsoever. And of course, I'm also recently I'm known as the girl who unicycles on campus, although if I have a helmet or if I brought my helmet on or not, that's a totally different story. But today I'm going to actually present to you all my journey. I'm mostly well known as a poet here at CWU, just to tell you all my journey and how I got there. So how it all started, so it started back in first grade. And I remember my handwriting was not the best. And I remember my first grade teacher, during parent-teacher conferences, told my parents about my bad handwriting. And one of the solutions that my first grade teacher came up with was to have me write short stories. And so from there, my parents told me to write short stories. And I kind of continued going on that up until the 8th grade. And in 8th grade, that's when I started being introduced into poetry. And we had a project at that day, well, at the time, we had a project. And what I did in order to present in front of my class was I had all my poems all up in those science foldable poster boards, which was pretty neat at the time. And so later words, I was about to present a poem about my brother, which my brother has an exceptionality of his own. And at the time when I presented it, like the words of the poem were all around, like around his picture. So the words of the poem were all around. And it was not until when I was about to share that specific poem about my brother, I had a classmate who raised their hand, and I called on her. And she told me the first thing, she said, "Ruby, I'm so sorry about your brother." And when I got that comment, I felt so bad, and I wanted to initially kind of switch the poem to a different poem that I wanted to share. But instead, I kind of bounced back and actually decided to share that poem. And I said to myself, you know what, there's a reason why I shared this poem, I wanted to share this poem, and I'm going to share it. So I built that pride of poetry. And from then on, I continued up until my journey here, and up until my arrival here at Central. Now, coming to Central, I am actually a first-generation college student. And when I first arrived here, I wanted to major in pre-medicine. But instead, I kind of lost the interest of pre-med and actually got interested into writing and decided to more experiment with writing. And it was not until eventually I got the interest into writing and giving back, and I said, you know what, I might as well major in English because I love to write, and maybe education, I want to be a teacher, so I said to myself, I'm going to be an English teacher, and that's what I did. So when I started to share back in January 2016 at an open mic event. It was actually the same day I actually had my networking development from there. And the two groups that I actually started the networking was with the DEC, the Diversity Equity Center, and the Black Student Union, BSU. Now, that same day, I actually got invited by the Black Student Union to participate at Showtime at Central. And for those who don't know, Showtime at Central is basically a talent show. However, there's a certain time, after a specific time, the audience gets to decide whether you, as the talent, your talent gets to stay on stage or you get booed off the stage. So as a first year student, I actually decided to participate in it, and unfortunately, I actually got booed off the stage. And at the time, I was like, oh, this is like trying to toughen up in front of everybody. But right when I got back to my dorm, actually, I was ashamed, I was embarrassed, I was disappointed in myself. And because of that, I tore my poem, and it was that exact same poem I presented, my first poem I wrote here, so I tore it apart. But eventually, I overcame that and continued on with, a year later, continued on with my classes here at Central. I just started the English education program, and so one of the classes that I had to take was English 303, Principles of English Studies. Now, just to give you all some quick feedback, it is a class that all English undergraduate students have to take, whether you are an English Lit and Lang major, English education, or creative writing major. So it is a class that everyone has to take. I find it more as a principles of a nightmare because of the experience that I went through, and not only had to face this nightmare once, but also twice as well. So the first time I took it, it was pretty okay up until a certain point when I had that interaction with my professor. And from there, I got more reserved, more timid. I got a little bit more uncomfortable than being in that class. And then when I came back in the fall of 2017, I felt unsafe. I constantly wanted to skip class, to be honest. And even if I even had questions to ask my professor, I had to ask my friends to even to help me to go with me and go to my professor's office hours. But eventually, in the midst of all this, at that same time, I actually was part of a cohort called the Chavez King Leadership Institute, and which is part of the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement. And at the time, when I first joined in, the students who were in the cohort, they had developed high expectations for themselves and for each other. And to me, at that time, that was a pull for me to be successful, and it was like a pull in a rope to help me be successful, becoming a champion and doing better. And eventually, that's what happened. And so, because of the Chavez King Leadership Institute, I was able to grow and become a champion. In fact, I'm willing to share with you all the poem, A Champion's Directions. I take one step forward. I don't think about turning back, because I'm glancing to see the future. I know that there are challenges I must face, but like a boxing match, I must be prepared, whatever it takes to win. Life has its photographic memories. I can remember the best of times, as well as the worst of times. I'm often reminded how impossible dreams could be. I get flashbacks about the failures I commit, but like the sun, I still rise. When I get sad, I can go into two different paths. I can go into one path where I see the sky turning gray and be falling off the cliff of failure. The other path has multiple flights of stairs, where I can tackle the impossible to prove everyone, including myself, wrong. I prefer to take the path with the stairs. If I feel like giving up, I can slowly climb down to the bottom. If I feel like doing the impossible, I can climb faster to the top. I can't reach to the top of the stairs right away. I would need patience and determination, as well as frustration and anxiety. It could take minutes, hours, days, months, and even years. By challenging myself to reach my goals, I know that I'm working hard towards the top, and I know that I'll become a champion. So, now before I move on, I kind of want to ask you all just a couple questions. But was there any moment where you all had any self-doubt, and if so, what did you all do in those situations? Yes.
A couple different moments, whether they be professional or academic. I think it really required for me to dig deep and find that level of tenacity and resilience and look toward examples of others that have accomplished things very similar and utilize them as inspiration.
Absolutely, thank you. Anybody else?
Well, I think I was just listening to an interview with a very accomplished individual, and she was saying that it was not unusual for her to feel those, feelings of self-doubt. But she truly believes in the fake it till you make it. That you just kind of dig down, Andre said, dig down and then put your best foot forward and pretend to have that confidence. And eventually, she possesses that confidence.
Absolutely, thank you. Anybody else? Alrighty, in the midst of all of this, I learned with the Chavez King Leadership Institute to have a support group. And throughout my time as a poet and as a CW student, I eventually grew my support system. So I have a few support systems, some more than others. So just a couple quick examples. For the English department, the First Amendment out loud reading, that I had the participation, I'll explain that one a little bit later on. DEC, in-group dialogue featuring student involvement, I actually was invited to participate and actually work with the co-founder of the in-group dialogue, and I'm actually really excited because I actually have one of my poems going to be featured in his book, which will be coming out this August, so I'm very excited for that. And then very recently, the 5th Annual Diversity Awards. And of course, I was actually invited by the Diversity Awards Committee, as well as having students and administration to hear my poem was quite an honor. And of course, the CLCE, and one of the events I'm going to talk about is MLK Make a Difference. So I was actually invited by the CLCE director to participate in this event. And actually, the picture on the right, that's actually me in the event. But basically, I was talking about the honoring the legacy of MLK. And of course, my cohort being part of the Chavez King Leadership Institute. And eventually, I had the opportunity to go to the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute, which I was able to not only connect with students here on campus, but also do a lot of networking and do a lot of professional development and personal development as well. And in the midst of all this, to this day, I still work with many people who are considered my mentors and friends to this day. And because of that, they became my support system. And with that, I wrote the poem, and I'm going to share with you all, what is a friend? What is a friend? A friend is someone that gets to know you, starting out as strangers to a person loving. A friend is someone that every time they see you, after days, weeks, months, and even years, they always look forward to your presence. A friend is someone that enjoys your presence and doesn't hate every moment, but lives every moment like a photograph. A friend is willing to share anything with you, like a meal or a story from their past. A friend doesn't abandon or hurt one another, like a backstab in the heart, but a friend requires a single key for a successful relationship, called communication. I have friends that I met 10 years ago, while others I've met 10 days ago. I have friends that support me whatever I do, while others fight and cheer with me. I have friends I spend the day with, while others I spend hours with. I have friends that I talk about, while others I think about often. I have friends that message me, while others give me a phone call. I have friends that have the same hobbies as me, while others I learn something new. I have friends, and at the end of the day, you learn a lot from them. So, kind of going on a little bit more of the growth of the support systems and support groups I have here on campus. A lot of them, my friends and mentors, like I was just mentioning to you all, they all recently have been telling me, Ruby, you have grown so much throughout the years, and throughout your time at Central. And I didn't realize that. It didn't get into me until very recently, when I was putting on a visual timeline for you. And in fact, I'll show you right now about how much I've grown throughout the years. So I'll do a little bit of, just to go through this quick, this timeline here. So the first picture up here, that is actually my first poetry slam with the DEC back in 2016. That's actually one of my proudest moments, because It's always the first poetry slam. Then the second picture onto the bottom left is the CLCE Unheard Voices. The theme was Cinco de Mayo, and this was held back in May of 2017. And this was, the slam was actually held or the event actually was held at Cornerstone Pie. And the third picture here, this is actually, I was actually citing my boss's copy at the Trio Lab, back in May of 2017, citing her copy of the Menage Tash. And in fact, I will be sharing it right after this presentation, a couple of my poems that will be featured in this year's upcoming Menage Tash issue. So if you want to check out more, go check out in the Cirque Theater right after this presentation. And then, of course, the DEC Feminine Voice, this is actually one of my favorite events to present. I get super passionate about this event. And finally, the First Amendment Out Loud reading. Actually, this picture here, as I kind of look back into it, this is actually it actually took me back into a flashback. I have more time. Okay. And actually, it all started from my mentor who called me one day and actually invited me to an event called Tea at 3, which is now known as Late Night Leadership. And so at the time I went to this event, and the people who were presenting were the founders of DNM. And as the founders of DNM were talking, I was jotting down notes, and at some point I ended up getting like a flashback moment of my past, of how much I've grown and how much I was willing to branch out and to not let people chop me down, to not let people chop me down. And so with all of that, I actually wrote and got really inspired to actually write one of my favorite poems. And I'm so excited to share with you all, Grow. You start out as a small seed, trying to make a difference. But there are brick walls that people create on purpose for you not to succeed. It seems from right to left. You have that expectation to fail. Why does it have to be that way? Does it mean anything, or does it mean nothing? Like a tree that has been planted by the waterfront, it took its time to grow. That's with you as well. You need to take your time. Soon enough, you sprout faster than you can see. People begin to notice how beautifully you branch out and even compliment you. When you finally achieve and make a difference, you're strong as a tree stump. People may chop you down, but you stay firm to help others to stand tall for many years to come. You have defeated heavy rain and gusty winds, and visible against the morning fog. Nothing will stand against your way, regardless of weather. With the sunlight shining at you, the future is beautiful than ever before. So, before, as we were coming into a concluding end, I want to ask you all that, what are your passions? What are your passions? Yes.
Music.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Cinema.
Cinema.
Cooking.
Cooking. Awesome. Anybody else? Well, it doesn't matter what your passions are, whether it's music, cinema, cooking, going to Zumba, even writing poetry, or even napping, of course. You take that passion, whatever passion you have, take that passion and run with that passion, because you never know what the doors will take to you and what life will give you. And that's what I found out, as what I've learned throughout the years as a CW poet and a student, that my growth and whatever opportunities are out there, I took the chance and I was willing to take that chance, and the doors were open to me. And if you all want to know a little bit more about my poetry, please check out the site on nambowrites.com. And I'm going to officially reintroduce myself. My name is Ruby Nambo, and this is my unexpected pathway. Thank you.